everyone, in this video I'm going to create a Valentine's theme card using Simon Says stamp and dies. So to start out with, I used the Tattered poppy die set. I die cut the petals in red cardstock, the stem and leaves in a green cardstock, and I used black and yellow cardstock for the other pieces. Now the stem die, it has two separate stems. I ended up using one of them, the straighter one, but you could save the other one for another project, or you could add another flower to the same project. Just get all these taped up and die cut. And after you get these die cut, you want to take them out. Some of them are really intricate, like this black piece here. So I used the Tim Holtz paper piercer, I guess that's what it's called, to poke them all out. And you want to be very gentle in doing this because they're so teeny tiny. And that was giving me a little trouble there. So I took my mat here and I'm going to be distressing all the little pieces except for the black parts because they're so tiny. And I started out using fired brick on the petals, and you want to go around the edges a little. I did it sort of dark-ish, but as they dry, the ink will absorb into the paper, so it won't be as harsh of a color. And then I took the ink blender and went on the inside, but not as dark of a color, I guess that's what you say. Just go around all of those petals. And it makes it a really cool distressed look. I mean, if you're going for a vintage card, I would do this. I mean, you could totally do it without doing this at all, but I really love the distressed look that these inks give. I guess that's why they're called distress inks, but I just love the way it looks. And it's really hard to get these little bitty pieces without making a mess on your fingers, but just get some ink down on here. And I used mowed grass for the leaves and the stem. And then I'm going to use fossilized amber for the yellow piece right here. There's not much ink blending that you can do, but I just ran it around the edges just to give it a little differentiation and color. So I took the Lawn Fawn Scalloped rectangle die, and I ended up die cutting 4 of these. And I took the stitched oval die from Lawn Fawn as well, and put it towards the middle of the panel. And I'm making a frame. I wanted to make it a layered frame, but I didn't want the dimension of the foam tape. So I layered up 4 of these panels just to give it a little dimension. And you can save those stitch circles for another project. And I'm using coral colored cardstock by Recollections. So I'm just getting this cut up. And what I did to line up all of them, I layered the first panel that I cut out, and then the second one, and then I put the circle from the first panel in it, like the negative space or whatever, as you can see here, and then removed the outer panel. Then line up the die like this, and then tape it down. That way you can get sort of the same, well, as close as possible to the same frame. It's hard to explain, but I've seen many crafters on YouTube do this technique, and it worked great for me. So now I'm taking some abandoned coral to the outside edges of this panel just to add the distressed look to it. Just get the edges there. Now you can just leave it like this, but I went ahead and went around on the inside edges as well, just to give it an additional distressed look. It kind of reminded me of a vintage postage stamp. I went a little hard right there with the ink, but it'll be covered up soon. So I took this pattern paper from this 6x6 paper pack that I found at Hobby Lobby. It's one of the scripty papers. And then I die cut the same scalloped rectangle die, or I used the same scalloped rectangle die to die cut this panel just so it'd fit perfectly behind the coral colored panels. Get that die cut, and then you want to take all your panels and then line them up. And I used the Tombo mono multi-glue to glue these together. You could use regular adhesive, but I decided to use liquid glue or liquid adhesive, whatever, so you have time to move it around and line it up as best as you can, versus regular adhesive where once you put it down, that's where it is. Get that all lined up. Put your last piece up. And it didn't line up perfectly at the top, which is no biggie for me because the flower ended up covering it in the end. So I took my PermaTac Glue Glider Pro and laid down some adhesive along the sides, and then adhered that to the pattern paper panel. That was a tongue twister, pattern paper panel. So get that lined up, and it was easier for me to go from the side to get it lined up. So that's what it should look like. Next I took some vellum and used the Simon Says Stamp Big Addons stamp set and used the sentiments Lots of Love and then To You so I could heat emboss the sentiment on the vellum. Now I would recommend putting or using your powder tool before you do this, but for some reason I never remembered to use that thing. But luckily I didn't have a problem with the embossing powder getting on or sticking to the rest of the vellum. And I'm using some VersaFine Onyx black ink to heat emboss with clear embossing powder from Recollections. Just sprinkle that on there, and luckily, like I said, it didn't stick anywhere else. Now you want to heat your heat gun up for at least 30 seconds at least to get it good and hot before you bring it to your project. And with vellum, I like to heat and put the heat underneath the project to melt the embossing powder. I took my paper trimmer and trimmed it up as close to the word as close to the sentiment as I could to create a strip to put on my project. Then I took I lined it up to the card where I thought I would like it So I took my Zig Glue Pen and I put the adhesive behind the letters just so you won't see it through the adhesive if you put it behind the letters. Then line it up on your mat. Get that down there and trim. I ended up trimming the tails because I didn't want to be too bulky behind it, and I used my PermaTac to adhere it to the back of the panel just to get it all nice and snug. Then I took my flower pieces and used my Zig Glue Pen as well to adhere it to my card. I wanted it to look like it was popping up out of the frame, so I adhered the stem to the inside and made it look like I was poking out. This image is from the original packaging from the die, and I just trimmed it because I knew I would need help lining up these petals later on when I used it. So, because it is a bit tricky when you're first using this die. Just get those glued in. And I was lining it up, making sure I got it down pat, and this bottom petal, oh my gosh, the first time I made this card I ended up gluing it on backwards, and then I finally looked at the packaging and lined it up correctly. So get those on there. And before you put the last petal on there, you could probably go ahead and start putting on the other pieces, but I just ended up gluing that panel first, or petal. Tuck this piece behind here. And the stems on these black pieces are so intricate, or whatever you want to call it, that they kept popping up, so I ended up taking an acrylic block and laying it on top until the glue dried, just so they actually stick to the project. Get these all glued up. I took some plain white cardstock and cut it to 4 1/4 by 11 to create a top folding card, and I used my Martha Stewart scoreboard to score it at 5 1/2. I just thought it would give it be a fun element to make it a top folding card instead of a side fold. Get that all folded, then adhere it. I used my Glue Glider Pro to adhere it to the panel. And then that finishes this note card. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for weekly card making videos and click the thumbs up button if you enjoyed. And on your screen is a video from last week, so don't forget to check that out. So thanks so much for watching, and see you later. Bye!